Once upon a time, in fact, it was on a Tuesday, I was taking a stroll through the forest, just strolling along, when suddenly I heard something was coming through the trees. I didn't know what it was until I saw... Oh, it was a bear. Just a slow-moving, ordinary bear. He was a very nice-looking bear, as bears go. His fur was brown and fuzzy all over, just like a teddy bear. Except, of course, he was much larger than a teddy bear, and I don't think his name was Teddy. Well, anyway, he walked over to the edge of the forest and stopped. And then he looked up at the sky, and away up high he saw a flock of geese flying south. And then he looked up at the trees, and the leaves had turned all yellow and brown and were falling from the branches. Now he knew that when the geese flew south and the leaves fell from the trees, that winter would soon be here and snow would cover everything. So he started walking back into the forest. It was time for him to go into his cave and hibernate.
And that was just what he did. The bear was soon fast asleep and dreaming sweet dreams just like all bears do.
Not long afterward, in fact it was on a Wednesday, lots of men came into the forest with steam shovels and axes and saws and tractors. The men started to saw and chop down all the trees. Timber! The tractors pulled the trees away, the steam shovels dug holes all over, and the men worked and worked and worked and worked, and finally they built a great, big, huge factory right over the top of the sleeping bear's cave. I wonder what will happen when our bear wakes up. The factory operated all through the cold winter, and then it was spring again. Yes, it was spring again, and the buds were budding, and the bees were beeing, and the brooks were brooking, and the bears were... Oh, yes, the bear. I almost forgot. Well, you know where the bear is, don't you? That's right. He's still fast asleep in the cave.
Deep down under the big factory. Then all of a sudden, the bear awoke and yawned, and he stretched one arm and then the other and started walking up the stairs to the entrance. And yawned
and stepped out into the bright spring sunshine. His eyes were only half opened, as he was still very tired and sleepy. But his eyes didn't stay half opened long. They suddenly popped wide apart. He looked around him. Where was the forest, the grass, the trees, the flowers? What had happened? Everything was so strange. He didn't know where he was. But we know where he is, don't we? Yes, indeed. He's right in the middle of the big, busy factory. Just then a man dressed in overalls walked up to the puzzled bear and said,
"Hey, you! I'm the foreman of this factory. You'd better get back to work."
"Oh, I don't work here. I'm a bear."
That's a fine excuse for a man to keep from doing any work. Saying he's a bear.
But I am a bear.
Don't try to fool me. You are not a bear. You are a silly man who needs a shave and wears a fur coat.
Oh, no, you're mistaken. I am a bear.
A bear? We'll see about that. I'm going to take you to the general manager.
And that's just what he did. The general manager had a small office with one wastebasket and one telephone and one secretary.
Come in.
The general manager became very angry and said,
"You're not a bear. You're a silly man who needs a shave and wears a fur coat."
"Oh, I'm sorry to hear you say that. You see, I am a bear."
We'll see about that. I'm going to take you to the third vice president.
The third vice president had a much larger office with two wastebaskets and two telephones and two secretaries.
Come in. Come in.
The third vice president became very, very angry and said,
You're not a bear. You're a silly man who needs a shave and wears a fur coat.
"Oh, but that isn't true. I'm a bear. Just a plain, ordinary, everyday bear."
We'll see about that. I'm going to take you to the second vice president.
The second vice president had a much, much larger office with three wastebaskets and three telephones and three secretaries.
Come in. Come in. Come in.
The second vice president became very, very, very angry.
You're not a bear. You're a silly man who needs a shave and wears a fur coat.
Who, me? Oh, how can you say that when I am a bear?
We'll see about that. I'm going to take you to the first vice president.
The first vice president had a much, much, much larger office with four wastebaskets and four telephones and four secretaries.
Come in. Come in. Come in. Come in.
The first vice president became very, 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 and very angry.
You're not a bear. You're a silly man who needs a shave and wears a fur coat.
Oh, this is a dreadful error, you know, because ever since I can remember, I've always been a bear.
We'll see about that. I'm going to take you to the president's office.
No, not that. The president had a much, 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 much larger office. In fact, he had the muchiest, largest office in the whole world, with 5 wastebaskets with tassels on them, and 5 telephones, and 5 secretaries.
Come in. Come in. Come in. Come in. come in. Come in.
The bear walked across the huge office, up past the first secretary, the second, the third, the fourth, and the fifth, past the 5 beautiful wastebaskets with lovely tassels on them, to the huge desk of the president. The bear stood there a moment, and then...
Pardon me, Mr. Factory President. I don't work here. Honest, I'm a bear. And please don't say I'm a silly man who needs a shave and wears a fur coat.
The president in his big office, sitting in his big, big chair, behind his big, big, big desk, looked at the bear, and then... The president spoke.
Thank you for telling me. I won't say what you said not to say, but that's just what I think you are.
But I'm a bear.
You can't be a bear. Bears are only in a zoo or circus. They're never inside a factory, and that's where you are, inside a factory. So I'm going to prove it to you once and for all that you are not a bear.
I still think he's a bear, don't you? I wonder how they can prove that he isn't. The president and the bear and all the others got into the president's big car and drove away from the factory to a big zoo with all kinds of animals. When they got there, they all walked over to the cage where the zoo bears were. The president tipped his hat politely to the bears in the cage and said,
Good morning.
Then, pointing to the bear beside him, the president asked,
Is he a bear?
The zoo bears in the cage looked at the bear beside the president and said,
No, he isn't a bear, because if he were a bear, he wouldn't be outside the cage with you. He would be inside the cage with us.
But I am a bear. Just then, a little baby zoo bear pointed at the bear outside the cage and said,
I know what he is. He's a silly man who needs a shave and wears a fur coat.
No, I am a bear. Honest, I am a bear. And so they all got back into the president's car and left the zoo and drove 642 1/2 miles away to the nearest circus.
Peanuts, popcorn, all right, step right up. All right, step right up, folks. See the dancing bear.
Circus bears were doing tricks in a large ring.
The president tipped his hat politely to the circus bears and said,
Good afternoon.
Then, pointing to the bear beside him, the president asked,
Is he a bear?
The circus bears in the ring looked at the bear beside the president and said,
No, he isn't a bear, because if he were a bear, he wouldn't be sitting in a grandstand seat with you. He would be wearing a little hat with a striped ribbon on it, holding onto a balloon and riding a bicycle with us.
But I am a bear. Just then, a little baby circus bear rode up on a big bicycle, and pointing at the bear in the grandstand seat, he said,
Oh, I know what he is. He's a silly man who needs a shave and wears a fur coat.
All the circus bears almost fell off their bicycles laughing. Oh, but I am a bear. Believe me, I am. And so they put the bear into the president's car and drove him away from the circus and back to the factory. Standing before a great big important machine, the president told the first vice president, who told the second vice president, who told the third vice president, who told the general manager, who told the foreman, who told the bear to...
Get to work!
Yes, sir. The bear went to work on a great big important machine with a lot of other men. The machine had lots of great big important buttons and levers and wheels and gears and cranks. All day Monday, the bear pushed buttons. All day Tuesday, the bear pulled levers. All day Wednesday, the bear turned wheels. All day Thursday, the bear turned gears. All day Friday and Saturday and Sunday, the bear crank. Push, pull, turn, shift, crank. Push, pull, turn, shift, crank. Day and night, buttons, night and day, levers, day and night, wheels, night and day, gears, seconds, minutes, hours, days, cranks. 30 days has September, April, June, and November. On all these days, the bear pushed buttons, pulled levers, turned wheels, shifted gears, cranks, pushed buttons, pulled levers, turned wheels, shifted gears, crank. And then, one day... the factory closed down, and all the workers left and went away. The bear walked out of the factory. He was all alone, and he had no place to go. And as he walked along, he came to another forest, and he happened to gaze up at the sky. And away up high, he saw a flock of geese flying south. Then he looked up at the trees, and the leaves had turned all yellow and brown and were falling from the branches. The bear knew that when the geese flew south and the leaves fell from the trees, that winter would soon be here and snow would cover everything. It was time to go into a cave and hibernate. The bear walked over to a large cave. He was just about to step into the cave when he stopped. But I can't go into a cave and hibernate. I'm not a bear. I'm a silly man who needs a shave and wears a fur coat. I'll just have to stay outside and freeze in the snow. So winter came. The winds blew, the snow fell. It covered the forest, and it covered the bear as he sat in the open, shivering with cold. Oh, I'm a man, but I sure wish I was a bear. The longer he sat in the snow, the colder he became. His toes were freezing, and his ears were tingling, and his teeth were chattering. Icicles covered his nose and chin. He just sat there because he didn't know what a silly man who needed a shave and wore a fur coat would do if he were freezing in the snow. He had been told he was a man so often that he felt that it must be true. He sat there all alone, remembering what had happened. That's a fine excuse for a man to keep from doing any work.
A man saying he's a bear.
You're a silly man.
You're not a bear.
I'm going to take you to the president.
Of course you're a man.
You need a shave. Come in. You need a shave.
Bears are only in a zoo.
If he was a bear, he'd be in the cage with us.
Bears are only in a circus.
If he was a bear, he'd be riding a bicycle with us.
You need a shave. Come in. You need a shave.
You're not a bear.
You need a shave.
You're not a bear.
You need a shave.
Yes, I guess the poor bear is really convinced he is a man. If he stays out in that terrible storm much longer, he'll surely... Oh, gosh. I hate to think of it. Wait. Something's happening. The bear's standing up. He's shaking the snow off him. He's starting to walk toward the cave. He's approaching the cave. He's standing right at the entrance. Will he go in? He's thinking. He's looking around. Now he's scratching his head. It looks like... Yes, it looks like... He's going in! He's going in! The big brown fuzzy bear has gone
into the cave! Inside it was cozy and snug. The icy wind and cold, cold snow can't reach him here. He feels warm all over. He's lying down on a soft bed of pine boughs. And now he's happily asleep. And dreaming sweet dreams, just like all bears do when they hibernate.
So, even though the foreman and the general manager and the third vice president and the second vice president and the first vice president and the president and the zoo bears and the circus bears had said he was a silly man who needed a shave and wore a fur coat, I don't think he really believed it, do you? No, indeed. He finally realized he wasn't a silly man, and he wasn't a silly bear either. And that is the story of the bear and the bear and the men. And the bear and the men and the factory. And the bear and the men and the factory and the zoo. And the bear and the man and the factory and the zoo and the circus. But mostly it was the story of a bear. A great, big, brown, fuzzy bear who looked like a teddy bear, except, of course, his name wasn't Teddy. Say, I wonder what his name was.